We got to watch the clock around here for more reasons than what you guys are thinking. So who are the others that we love? Well, first, fellow Christians. Sometimes we need unconditional love because, let's be honest, fellow Christians drive us nuts sometimes. So Jesus says in John 13, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another." Man, that's tough. That is a tough standard. And then he rubs it in just a little bit more when he said, "By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." What does the picture the world gets of Christians? Many times it's Christians who don't get along with each other. And the world notices that. The world notices when we scrap and fight and as Christians and get into trouble and all this stuff. But if we love one another, they get a picture of what being a Christian is really all about. Paul wrote in Romans 13, "Let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another." So that's what I meant when I said you never run out of love to give one to the other. And later in that same passage, he says, "Do this understanding the present time." And I think he probably meant something like what we just thought here. Understanding the present time, or the Hebrews 10:25 verse that is on the front of the bulletin. Do all the more as you see the day approaching. Understand what's going on and respond with love. That's what we have to give. And then, if that wasn't enough, Paul continues in Romans 13. He says, "The hour has come for you to wake up from your slumber, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed." Whoa. Don't be caught sleeping in this matter of love. Love involves telling the truth. It has no fear. It includes forgiveness. It offers forbearance. It builds up. It's sincere and not fake. And it serves one another. And Jesus made a very interesting comment in Luke 7:47 when he said that the one who has been forgiven little loves little. So if we go back and realize just how much we have been forgiven by God, we shouldn't have any trouble forgiving other people. And forgiveness is a characteristic of unconditional love. So fellow Christians. And then secondly, our neighbor, and that's the Good Samaritan. Who was the neighbor? It was the one that they didn't expect. And so a neighbor is anyone who crosses our path who is in need of Christ's love. Well, that doesn't rule out very many people. And then, oh man, if it wasn't tough already, our enemies, even the ones that don't like us. So not liking someone must not prevent our loving that person with unconditional love. Remember, Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, "You have heard that it was said, 'Love your neighbor and hate your enemy.'" That's the old law. "But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." How many of us have prayed for someone who we know doesn't like us? But we're supposed to do that. Someone has written that God has given us eyes and eyelids. You know what I mean by that? Eyes to see what's around us, and eyelids sometimes not to see. So what we see doesn't get in the way of our loving. And then fourthly, we also love ourselves. And what does it mean to do that? It doesn't mean to get on a big self-esteem kick and think that we're number one. Even if we're not supposed to acknowledge that. We're supposed to be humility, remember, godliness, humility. What loving ourselves is just accepting ourselves as God has made us and not be jealous about somebody else. Look and do an inventory. How has God wired you? How has God gifted you? How has He equipped you? And there's times when we have to offer ourselves some unconditional love. We tend to be really hard on ourselves a lot, don't we? And the devil loves that. The devil knows when you're hard on yourself. He comes right on in there and says, hey, you're absolutely right. In fact, I've been talking to God about you. How do I know that? Because He's described as the accuser of the brethren. And we, in loving ourselves appropriately, we counteract that. 1 Thessalonians 3, verse 12 has a prayer for an increase of love among us. I want to read this out of the NIV first, the more reasonable, rational translation. And then I'm going to shake it up with a couple of other translations. He says in the NIV, may the Lord make your love increase and overflow for each other and for everyone else, just as ours does for you. And then Marsh's translation, the New Living, says, and may the Lord make your love grow and overflow to each other and to everyone else, just as our love overflows to you. Well, that wasn't radical enough for me, so I grabbed Eugene Peterson's Message off the shelf. And yes, this is it. May the Master pour on the love so that it fills your lives and splashes over on everyone around you, just as ours does for you. I like that. Pour it on. Pour on the love and let it splash over. That's what overflows means. And when we do that, we'll find that all the rest of these character qualities that are Christ-like qualities that Peter mentions here will all line up in the right spot because we will be mature. Love is the goal. It's the completion of our Christian maturity. Love is so important because this is what God did for us through Jesus Christ, and that's why we celebrate the Lord's Supper. He does this stuff for us. He just graced us with the love that was motivating His sacrifice, Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. And God wants us to remember it, and that's why He gives us the table to observe. He took the bread, and the bread represents His body, which was put on the cross for us. The cup represents His blood that was shed for us on the cross. And the combination makes it so that He died, Jesus did, so that we might live and live for all eternity. So that's why we celebrate it the way that we do.